about some things that I've learned from Sass Plugins. So historically, developers don't like CSS, but pre-processors like Sass are a really great opportunity for us to disrupt that opinion. And one of the best ways to do that is to use more of the features of the language. And one of the best ways to learn is to read the source code of our plugins and frameworks to find some of those best practices. So these are some that I've found. So first up, grammar-proof your selectors. We've all felt the pain of debugging typos, and this happens amazingly frequently, particularly with strange words like grey. So when you're writing selectors, you should grammar-proof your selectors like Inuit CSS do. And now it's okay if the developer misspells the grey class. I'm sorry if you guys can't read this from the back, but sort of such is life. Okay, so number two, you can chain import statements. And for me, this was something that I always felt wrong about repeating the import directive. We chain our JavaScript variables, so why can't we chain import statements? Well, it turns out you can, and Foundation do this. 3, use objects for configs. This was something that also annoyed me about Sass, and it was the config file becomes a huge unorganized mess. And I always wanted to write Sass configs with an object syntax like we might do in JavaScript. Well, it turns out in Sass 3.3 you can use objects for configs, and Toolkit do it. So now that we have an object as our config, we can build our own getters and setters to write and read to these, just like Toolkit do. All right. Use lots of Sass partials, and this is something that goes without saying, but so many developers don't do this. Foundation do, Bootstrap do, Compass do. Actually, everybody does, so we should too. 5, document inline, and this becomes more important because our code's getting more complex. And CSS is notorious for comments that point out the obvious, or a general lack of commenting and bad naming conventions, or comments that are starting to be helpful but they don't convey any semantics. So Bootstrap, however, have particularly good commenting, and they explain things that we need to know, like that a value is intentionally unitless, or how the value was evaluated. Inuit use HTML snippets in their commenting to explain some of their class's semantics. Inuit also use picture comments to convey some useful information, so we can too. One that took me a while to figure out, mixin libraries are cheap. A mixin library in fact doesn't output any CSS, so you can have as many mixins as you like. And unless you use them, unless you use the mixins, they won't be sent to the browser. Or some frameworks like Foundation make this optional. Foundation have a simple Boolean switch called include HTML to handle this. Alright, use the debug flag. Inuit have a variable called debug mode, and by setting this to true, a partial called debug is executed, and this paints useful things to the browser, like outlining image elements that are missing alt tags. So we could use a debug concept in our own code as well. Maybe it'd be a useful way of debugging layout elements. 8, format your mixin parameters so they're easy to read. Don't write mixin parameters on one line. And use lots of white space between them. Format them like Compass do. so people can read them really quickly. 9, if your code is going to be readable, you need to be guarding your arguments. You can check for empty arguments with the length function like toolkit do. And now you can do something with the condition like setting a default value or emitting a warning. Or you can predefine optional arguments with null. And this might be a good way of turning off a feature in your mixin. Or you can guard against argument order like compass do. And the point really is that there are many logic controls that we have available to us, so we should use them more. Okay, 10, and this is my last point today. Don't be too serious. We're CSS devs and we still like to have fun. And remember that most things get stripped out in the compile, so you probably won't get fired. Thanks very much.